All right, see if you can relate to this. It's 2 a.m., you're sitting at your desk, and you're on your 12th cup of coffee, and you're eating some cold pizza, and you're staring at a blank, empty email message on your laptop screen, and you're wondering how on earth you're going to explain to your largest client why the product release that they've been waiting for that's set to go on Monday is not going to happen, and there's going to be a delay, and do it without everyone losing their minds. Have you ever wondered why this actually happens, and why it happens so frequently? Well, what if I told you that there's a hidden reason why this happens fairly consistently, and it's a reason that's hiding in plain sight, and it's not one of the usual things that people tend to guess? If you stick around for a few minutes, I'll take you through what that is, and we'll explore how to address it. Okay, so let's think about how we got here. Every B2B digital product company pretty much starts off its fiscal year the same way. There's a big planning meeting, and we take a look at all of the strategic accounts and the key accounts and targeted growth accounts and so on that are on the list to develop and grow the company over the coming year. And alongside of those, there's usually a key list of strategic features that those customers are interested in order to close that business. And there's also a list of features that are important to maintain the relationship with existing customers. So those are on the list as well. And then from there, the planning happens with the delivery team and product management and all the other folks to look at, okay, when can we get these built? What order should we build them in? What are the technical implications? What requirements don't we have? What questions do we have open? That sort of thing. And this plan gets put together, and there's a roadmap created for the year, and everybody signs off on it, shakes hands, goes out for a coffee or a beer afterwards, and then the next day they get to work. And inevitably, there's a series of issues that crop up. It's either, and it's not just one issue, it's a number of issues. Some of the symptoms include things like, well, the timeline was too aggressive, or we didn't know everything about the requirement, or we didn't have all of the technical capabilities that we thought we needed, or we didn't have the right talent in place to actually deliver the features, and so on and so on. There's a litany of symptoms that I could go on and on about, but that's just a sample. So hopefully these sound familiar. I think we've all seen them come up from time to time, or more frequently than we like, probably in reality. And what that turns into is eventually there's a delay. Because of one of those issues, it snowballs, maybe doesn't get acted on soon enough, or even if it does, it's not able to be remedied in time. And eventually we get to the point where, okay, it's 2 a.m. and you're writing that email about the delay, and nobody likes being in that spot. And not only is that uncomfortable in the moment, because a moment can pass, but there's some downstream effects that happen, some negative effects to the company. Usually it involves, especially if it's a big feature, it involves things like reputational damage, because there's probably been marketing activity and messaging sent out and expectations set. And if you're a public company, you've told people in earnings calls probably about what's coming up next quarter or 2 quarters out, and there's been some news and some discussion around the valuation of your company. If you're a private company, then you probably talk to your board of directors. You probably talk to your largest clients, and you've told them, made some commitments, and your sales team has also made some commitments, probably based on those deals that were coming up. So not being able to deliver on those damages the trust that's been built with your clients and your stakeholders, and that's not a good place to be. And so this is an ongoing issue. It happens to every company, and there's, as I said earlier, there is a very common reason for this, and we're going to get into that right now. So on to the hidden reason. Now, you may have noticed, even in your own career or in the careers of others, in the B2B companies that you've worked at over the years, that when it comes to delivery leaders in particular, you'll notice that the most technically capable and the smartest and brightest and most accomplished of the bunch are promoted up through the ranks into leadership positions, into engineering managers, engineering directors, and so on. And there is a inherent problem with that, in that the criteria used is the one I just said is the technical acumen and the skill and experience area and the cleverness on the technical side of things of those folks. And they're all very, very smart people, but there is a gap in their knowledge, and that creates a bit of a rift between the delivery leadership throughout that part of the organization and the business, what I'll call the business leadership, which is the rest of the organization. And that disconnect leads to subtle drift in decisions, which has an amplification effect. Think of the butterfly effect down the road when technical issues that seem like small decisions or the right decision from the engineering lens, that turns out to have a serious business impact or a customer experience impact, which is the same thing as a business impact. And it wasn't seen early on because the delivery leader wasn't able to connect the dots to what the customer experience was going to be or what the business impact was going to be of doing that, of making that decision or making that small technical change that might be out of convenience or efficiency. A lot of, I come from a technical background, and I know that efficiency and effectiveness is at the heart of all decisions that are made. So you don't do more than you need to do. You do exactly what you need to do in order to get the job done. You don't want to over-engineer things. You don't want to under-engineer things. And sometimes what happens is some of those things happen because the problem isn't fully understood from a business perspective as well as from an engineering perspective. And then you see the types of business impacts that usually lead to a schedule delay. It's either because things aren't finished, or there are quality problems that are causing the delay, or the functionality just doesn't do what it's supposed to do, and so it has to be redone essentially in order to meet the needs. And so all of those things obviously require time and lead to a delay. So that kind of gap is something that we're trying to address here. And what I'm about to get into next is how do you close that gap with delivery leaders so that they are completely in sync with the business half of the organization, and you have a unified view and approach to delivering products and services to your customers, and build that trust instead of having events that damage the trust. Now, to close the gap between delivery leadership and business leadership, I've developed what I'm calling the technology delivery leadership framework. And it's comprised of 4 cornerstones. And none of this is going to sound new to you. I think it's going to make sense when you hear it, but I'll lay it out for you now. We have 4 corners. So the first corner is craft. We have the second corner being people leadership. Third corner being delivery excellence. And the fourth quarter being business acumen. And I'll just take a moment and explore those a little bit further. So craft, obviously, as you would think, is the engineering capability, and there's usually not a lot of help required here. Although if there is, that's usually already supported and taken care of by existing training and communities of practice that exist within the engineering organization. That's typically not where the issue is, but it's worth acknowledging that it's part of the total picture and that the total set of skills and knowledge that's required in order for delivery leaders to be effective. The next area is delivery excellence. And delivery excellence is everything that you need to actually deliver the product. So think product management, project management, quality strategy, all of those pieces, like all that knowledge, DevOps knowledge, information security knowledge, governance and compliance. If you're working in data and with sensitive PII data and data engineering, those types of projects, all those pieces that have to come together and work to actually deliver something on time. The ability to estimate and deliver work on a predictable cadence. This is where all your project management tools are, be it Agile or Waterfall or whatever combination that you're using. All of those things are in this category, and that is a deep knowledge area. The next area is people leadership, and that is everything that's required to relate to people, as you might think. So that's everything from one-on-ones and how to do those effectively, how to give feedback effectively, how to communicate effectively, how to be self-aware when you're interacting with other people so that you don't bring your own emotions in, and being effective so you build more bridges than you destroy when you're communicating with people. It's all of those pieces. And then finally, and most importantly, or at least equally importantly, is business acumen. And that's really the knowledge of the industry that your company sells in. What's that market like? What are the customers? What do you have knowledge of customers, and what services and what level of service and level of quality they expect? What are the customers' problems, your clients' problems that they're trying to solve by using your product? Do you understand that very well? Do you have any understanding of, say, legal acumen, financial acumen? Do you understand how the services side of the business works? All of those pieces that add up together that form a complete picture of how a corporation works, because those are all factors in the decisions that you make in some way or another, because everything does not exist in a vacuum. The company itself is actually a complete system, and these are the 4 cornerstones. And I find that once engineering leaders have branched out and expanded their view to take into account these 4 areas, they are much more able to make better decisions that are well balanced and more in alignment with the CEO if they were in the room when they were making that decision with them. So that helps reduce a lot of the pressure from above, and it also helps to allow better decision making in parallel. So there's not so much waiting on approvals and so on. Not that approvals aren't necessary, and they are in certain scopes, obviously, but this allows the prep work to get the approval to be done in a much more effective way, so that there's less back and forth to get something approved if it's that kind of structure. So this just develops that entire holistic view of that a delivery leader would have in order to make very good decisions that are in line with the corporate strategy and should reduce and will reduce delays and other types of problems that you're going to have. And it has an added bonus that when the leaders model this behavior and demonstrate openly, this is how they're making their decisions, and they explain those decisions to their staff, those staff members also begin to emulate the leader and their thinking style, because it's the why, or the reasoning, the rationale behind the decisions is actually being explained to them. And so they understand, they begin to adopt it. And as those people become more senior and develop themselves in their own individual contributor career paths, and they get to the point where they become the leaders, they've already have that instilled in them. And so it'll be much easier for them to come up to the level that's required as they develop themselves as leaders when that time comes. So then you start the pipeline of the next generation of leaders who are able to do the same thing and be in line with corporate strategy. So that's the key to closing that gap, is the technology delivery leadership framework and those 4 cornerstones: the craft, people leadership, business acumen, delivery excellence. And so you might be wondering, well, okay, Dale, this all sounds great, but how do I go about closing these gaps anyway? Like, where do I get started? Well, it's pretty easy to get started, actually, and I'll give you a few tips right here. So right away, let's start with people leadership. So one of the most effective ways to get things started is to ask for some feedback, and you can do that either through some of your one-on-ones with the people that report into you, and ask them for some feedback if you have that kind of relationship where they're comfortable enough to do that. Another way to do it is to ask for a 360 review. Ask your leader or your manager for a 360 review. Most companies have that tool, those types of tools available. They're fairly common. At least, or even get them on a per fee basis to initiate a 360 review. So you get anonymous feedback that comes in from a list of people that you select, and always obviously ask them beforehand before you put them on the list, and get their permission. But definitely, if you can get some folks to agree to that, do that, and you'll get some unbiased and unfiltered feedback that you probably wouldn't get in a face-to-face meeting. So that's a good tool to use just to get started, to give yourself some data to work with, right? If we move on to business acumen, get to know what the concerns are of the other departments or other groups within your company. So, for example, maybe ask for a coffee or a lunch meeting with each of the department heads, the head of marketing, the head of sales, the head of HR, that type of thing, and understand what is it that they have on their minds. Like, what is it that keeps them up at night? What do they see as their key concerns? What are their goals? Everyone has goals for the year within the company, and you should understand what theirs are. Maybe you have a direct connection to them fulfilling those goals, actually, and that you didn't quite realize before, and maybe not. And then you wonder why they maybe bring up topics sometimes that don't seem directly pertinent to what you're thinking about. It might be things that are still important, but they're not directly connected. And it's good to be aware of those things, so you have some empathy for the concerns of your colleagues that are heading up other groups. So definitely do that. And the other thing is, when they do bring up things in meetings, when you're in meetings with them or with their other leaders that are from their departments, pay attention to what they're asking and the issues that they're bringing up, and wonder to yourself, why? Do you understand why they're asking about that? Why is that a concern? And if you don't understand, feel free to ask. It's okay to if it's okay if the tempo of the meeting is such that you can ask that question there, then ask the question there, just to help you understand, and always frame it with that you're seeking to understand, not that you're trying to challenge them. You just want to understand the concern a little bit more. And if the tempo is not right for that, or the circumstances aren't right, you can always take them aside and ask them in the hallway or something afterwards, or over a coffee, and understand it further. But it's good to understand why those issues are coming up, because then you have better awareness around what's happening. And then in terms of delivery excellence, I would suggest taking a look at the most recent delivery delay that you've had, whether it's for a release or a specific feature or what have you. Take a look at that and attempt a root cause analysis just on your own and see if you can figure out what it might have been and where it leads back to, and use tools like the 5 whys and so on to get there, and do it yourself first, and then maybe expand it out to a small group, just to run through the exercise with them to better understand what it is and figure out if there are some recommendations that you can come up with in order to avoid that type of issue going forward. And it might be in an area where there might be some aspect of the delivery that you don't have deep knowledge, because some of these teams are big and there's lots of different skill sets involved. And if it's something that you don't understand, you might want to reach out to those people and understand that a little bit better and see if there's anything that you or your team could have done to help make that better, or to avoid that problem going forward. Or if there's something that they need that you can give them support on. So those are some kind of starting places to understand and develop your awareness around the other these cornerstones of the framework. And then I would say that if you want to take it a step further than that, you can come over to my website, and I'll put the link in the description, and take a look at some of the content there. And if you really want to take it even further, you can click on the connect button that I have up in the corner, and you can set up a quick Zoom call with me, and we can chat for a few minutes about some of the thoughts that you might have or some questions that you might have. I'm happy to have coffee with anybody, or a digital coffee with folks, in order to help them think through some of those issues and see if there's an opportunity to help. Okay, let's recap. So we talked about delivery delays and the business impacts that those can have, and that they're fairly significant business impacts that really can do damage to the trust that's been built with clients, which ultimately turns into missed revenue targets and missed profit targets, and really damages and puts at risk the health of the business and everybody's job really that works there. So they're not trivial issues that we're talking about, and as frequent as these types of delays are, they're something that we really need to pay attention to. I also introduced the technology delivery leadership framework and its 4 cornerstones to fill this gap in between the knowledge area that delivery leaders have and the business knowledge that the business leaders have, and bring those two perspectives together into a single perspective. And the 4 cornerstones of that framework are craft, business acumen, delivery excellence, and people leadership. And we explored those concepts a little bit and unpacked them a little bit. And then we talked about some places to start. Listed off some places within your organization that you can start right away to develop yourself in those areas. And then I also suggested that you come on over and visit my website, where we have some additional content, and we'll be continuing to put content out on this channel as well. So if you'd like to stay current on that, you can press the subscribe button. Also, there's a newsletter on the website, so if you'd like to register for that, you'll expect a newsletter on a monthly basis. It's not a high frequency list, so no worries about that. And if you liked this topic, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and stay tuned when we'll talk about more delivery optimizations that we can make to help everyone become better business leaders, better business operators, and better technical leaders. Until next time, take care.